Hello, thanks for coming. My name is Joe McGovern. I'm a programmer with the Wicked Queer Film Festival in our 37th year. And this is the third year that I'm curating Senior Moments, which you're all here for. And thanks for coming. We have a couple of thank yous to give out first to our partners, Zerb TV, for our second year of helping us get a virtual festival online. We have local partners with Arts Emerson in Boston and the Brattle Theater in Cambridge. For this particular program, we have a co-presenter of the Boston LGBT Aging project out of the Fenway Community Health Center in Boston. Um, so just a little backstory, this program came about, I've been a volunteer for about 10 years. And as I got older with the program and started seeing films that had to deal with older subjects and subject matter, I wanted a place to put that. So I asked the committee a few years ago if they would allow me to do that, and it was overwhelmingly received. So this is our third year, and I thank you for making films, and I thank you for allowing me to put your film in my particular program. So if we can just start with introductions, and I guess we'll start and just state your name, your film, and a little bit about the film. I don't know if any of you have seen the program yet in its entirety. It's been available online, to give the other filmmakers an idea of what your film is about, and hopefully you will see it. We have until the end of April, or as I've called it, Gapril, to view the shorts programs. So Antonio, if you'd like to start.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Antonio de la Torre, and I'm the director of Quartz. And Quartz is about Bernardo. He's an old art history teacher who, after 40 years, has an encounter with Victor, his long lost love from his past.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Stefan.
Hello, my name is Stefan Lankerer. I'm from Vienna and I'm the writer and director of Fabio. And Fabio is a film about aging and unfulfilled desires. And it's about an old man named Arthur who got confronted with his suppressed longings when a young caregiver comes into his life named Fabio.
All right, thank you. Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Ingham. I'm the director of Baby Lies Truthfully, which features Russell Tovey. It's a short about and bringing back to life the words of David Robilliard, who was a poet in London in the 1980s.
Thank you. And Piotr?
Hi,
Uh,
I'm Piotr Cieplak. I'm the director of Closed Casket, which is a film about Derek, who is a slightly idiosyncratic character, kind of doing most of his life from the comfort of his chair and looking out of his window. And this is Matthew, who plays Derek.
I'm Matthew Flax and I play Derek, slightly above my years, but yeah, it was great to play him. Very kind of quite intense character who, yeah, it's just.
Derek's my spirit animal.
Excellent.
So, yeah, as I was saying, I chose your film to be in the program, not necessarily because of physical age. It's more about, honoring people who've gone before us, and, the longevity, and just that spirit of, elder kinship. And, so I've got questions prepared. I reviewed last night because I initially, when I put the program together, it was a few months ago, and now that it's available online, I rewatched it last night and took a lot of notes. So I've just got a few questions, to kick off, and I guess I'll start, with Antonio. All right. So in reviewing your film last night, the questions I have or what I've noticed is to start the story off, it takes place in the movie theater and they're watching Sound of Music, which kind of for me set the tone because it's about music. There is a kind of that thread of music throughout. And I was curious if Bernardo and Victor had actually been lovers as, you know, in their youth, or was it more of an infatuation that was one-sided?
No, they definitely were lovers. It wasn't just Bernardo's infatuation or desires. Um, they definitely, I wouldn't say a couple like officially, but they were together and they loved each other. But since they couldn't, you know, be openly gay at that time, they had to hide and basically cut their relationship in order to marry and be like normal.
Yeah, because they
Well,
both do end up married.
yeah, yeah.
That states
Bernardo loves his wife, and he mentions, I'm sorry, that she was his best friend.
Yeah.
So he had a very lovely marriage, but he couldn't be with his loved one.
Right. Um, Now, I'm just curious if there's any, like, is this a basis of something, you know, in your life, or how did the characters in the movie come about?
Yes, this was inspired by an anecdote from an elder friend that had a lot of trouble here in Mexico because he was raised in a small town. So homophobia was higher, I should say. He couldn't be openly gay anytime in his life. He still is not openly gay as of today, and his family knew about 10 years ago, um, and they had him married against his will with a
Oh,
woman.
really?
So yeah, yeah. So what else? That woman was. This is besides topic, but that woman tried to kill him. So this is like a horrible situation that he left because he couldn't be openly gay, and that would have been easier and nicer and just easier for everyone. But his family won't accept him. His town, all his town know he's gay, but they only talk about it like in secret.
Hmm.
So it's not. It's all like it's a secret. They don't talk about it openly,
It,
and
it
yeah.
certainly would have made for a different film if you had pursued that angle of the wife trying to kill him. We could have put it in the horror films instead of this
Yeah,
particular one.
I know it's very melodramatic, and I kind of went with a not melodramatic but romantic story because I kind of wanted to have a light film and not about a murderous.
No, 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 no.
Yeah,
But I found it very moving because the end, I don't know if I, won't necessarily give away the end, but it was really kind of a gut punch for me because, being older, I have relationships from the past that I, think about fondly. And, when I first started using the interwebs a number of years ago, Googling people's names to try and find them. So there's always going to be that little bit of longing, and then if it ever happens, what's going to happen, you know? Um, let's see. One thing I found kind of not, I would say humorous, but when Bernardo's by the pool and he thinks that maybe Victor's calling him, and it was a funeral home offering him kind of discounts, and they said to him, "Well, you're in our demographic, so that's why we called you." It gave just enough lightness to then bring it back to the seriousness of it.
yeah. I'm glad that you found that humorous. That was the intention. It basically is a turning point for Bernardo, a subtle turning point because oh no, I'm in that demographic. I'm getting this phone call, so I should go ahead and contact my loved one, Victor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, And I was curious, when you start off the film, there's a like kind of a omniscient voiceover narration. Was there a particular reason you chose that as opposed to just kind of the linear narrative of, you know, the uh, the characters exposing themselves as opposed to the backstory?
I won't say it's some profound reason. I just think it's really personal reason. I think voiceover done correctly can add a little something to some movies. It can
Yeah.
be used you know, incorrectly, I should say, but I think the element of the voiceover in this film isn't done like, you know, over explaining things. So it just gives the background and, you know, okay.
Yeah, it set
how
it
the
into
story-
motion for the future events in the film, you know, because it didn't go throughout.
Yeah, I wanted to have that gut punch, as you said, in the end. That, well, I won't say anything because it's a spoiler, but yeah,
But you do all
definitely.
have to watch it. It's your homework assignment.
Yeah, but definitely the voiceover gives a gut punch to the end.
Yeah. Well, it moved me. I mean, it was one of the first films I had seen starting the season off during submissions. And, you know, it was the first one that I had to grab the tissue for crying,
Oh.
not for other reasons. So I get some other, yeah, I took a lot of notes on yours. It was the first one because what I did when I was reviewing it last night, I went in order of how it appears now on our website, or on Zerb, sorry. And let's see. Oh, so it almost seems when it does come to kind of fruition that maybe something happened. I it I saw the table kind of turn from, you know, Bernardo inviting him over to Victor becoming more not the aggressor but the pursuer. I think he turns out the
He took
lights.
control basically of the situation, right?
Yeah.
Because he had planned all right. He had planned already, sorry, this evening. So yeah, he knew, Victor knew what was he gonna do in that meeting, dinner.
Yeah.
And yeah, he definitely took over the situation and, you know, to control. And well, if we're going to dance, then let's dance. Let's
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a nice.
Yeah, because he
fun
got
moment.
up, changed the music, the station to
Yeah.
something more somber, or he said the other music was too somber. He wanted something else. They started dancing, and then it cuts to black. And you know, I always have to dig a little deeper. Is it implied that maybe something sexual happened, or left to the viewer's imagination?
No, it is implying. It is
Well,
implying that.
I wasn't sure because when Bernardo wakes up in the same shirt, you know, he didn't wake up like undressed, or, you know, he looked like he had just fallen asleep right after maybe Victor left.
Yeah, no, but the implication is definitely there.
Okay. And
Something
the letter, is it that left to my imagination too?
the ladder?
The letter that, or the little note that Bernardo reads?
Oh, the note. Yeah. Yeah, that's, well, what's the question? I'm sorry.
Is
the
it
note.
left to my imagination, maybe what the contents were?
Oh
Or
yeah, that definitely is to your imagination. There's an answer to that. Maybe I'll tell you privately.
oh, you
But yeah.
can email it or something. Yeah, you know. However, but
yeah,
you know, like I said, I like to dig a little deeper sometimes, maybe too deep, but
yeah, because if I definitely if I say what's on the note here, it's definitely a spoiler. So
oh, don't
so
then. Well, well, I appreciate that. And okay, so thank you, and we'll open it up after. So if you have any other information, just keep the continuity flowing. So just go move clockwise. Stefan, director of Fabiu. Let's see, where did your notes go? You were right on the top of the pile. So kind of start off is, you know, is there a basis of fact behind your story, and or how did it come about?
Yes, there is. You could say I adapted a nightmare I once had. And in this nightmare, I saw myself as an old man, and as a very sad old man who realizes that the chance to live as a gay man is over. Also, and yeah, he um, yeah, also to see this old man, to see me as myself as an old man was so intense that it made me to come out as gay. And yeah, I think it's often very good to see the world through the eyes of old people or elderly people, because then you know, often you know what you have to do to make your life better. Yeah.
Well, for me, it wasn't really a nightmare. It's more of like a recurring daily event because, I've gotten older, but I was lucky enough to come out at a time when I didn't have to hide it, because obviously Arthur is much older and, couldn't come out in his youth. Um, so it's definitely that kind of the repressed feelings. He does end up married. He has the sick wife that he's caring for, and that's why Fabio does come. When I was taking notes, I was curious about, he does mention at one point when they're on the balcony, talking about children. And I believe it's Fabio who asked Arthur
Mhm.
if has any children, and he said it wasn't for me.
Mm.
But I didn't know if he meant for me and my wife, like we, or just wasn't for me. That kind of gave me a little inkling that maybe all through his marriage,
Mhm.
there had been something maybe he was definitely hiding but maybe, acting on.
Mm. I like the thought that you get a feeling that Arthur and his wife were, like in Antonio's film, were best friends, and that they had a very active life, that they made many vacations, and that they, yeah, lived a life like two persons for that who do not want to have kids because children, because it would make their life too complicated.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes children can bond you to a point that you can't get out if you needed to, had there been that, possible escape route. Um, Sometimes I find the characters that are have the least uh, lines can be the most powerful, because I found Martha's presence, the Martha's wife, or Marta. Um, there were things I wanted to ask her, like, I knew she was infirmed, but was she cognizant of what maybe was going on? And had she been aware of what Arthur maybe had been hiding all those years? And, some of that. Um,
I would say yes, but yeah, there is no hint that you could knew. No. But I like the scene where we see the eyes moving, Arthur's eyes moving from Fabio to his wife, and his wife quietly looks to him.
yeah.
And so we could, yeah, so it's possible that she realizes what happens, and that she know what his husband, also knows the struggles of her husband.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of what I was grasping for. Is that sometimes no dialogue is the strongest dialogue, the eye movement. And I noticed too, when it starts out, their apartment is kind of modest, but it was very dark and almost bleak. And it seemed like as soon as he showed up, there was more and more light. And it got, even when, one point when you're viewing through the curtains, it was very like the dark green, kind of lace print. And then at one point when Fabio is in front of the window, it was just the green was gone. It was like a golden, glow around him. And then slowly as, he's leaving, it goes back to the bleakness. Was that part of it in your process or?
I cannot say that this was intended,
Of course.
but it was. We have this. One time we see the curtain that moves when the wind
Yeah.
goes
Against the
in.
carpet.
Goes in. Yeah, and it's when Fabio arrives, and so we wanted that with Fabio, the world from outside comes into the apartment, and that something opens up for them.
Yeah. Like kind of a spirit coming in.
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed too in the kind of towards the end, I'm not going to give spoilers here too. So homework assignment, watch the films. When Arthur is kind of, preparing to maybe try and open some sort of channel with Fabio, the kind of elaborate procedure he goes through of, fastidious grooming and, the close up on him, applying a little maybe makeup concealer. Um, that was definitely, telling to me that he had had this maybe as a possibility that, um, that there might be something. And so I'm just curious why the detail to his preparing.
To be honest, it's an how do you say uh, I oh it's a quote of the film from Luchino Visconti, Death in Venice. There is a scene where Gustav von Aschenbach, it's also an old man, gets prepared in a barber shop, and in this movie, he fell in love with a young boy, and but this young boy doesn't see Gustav von Aschenbach. He ignores him, and and Gustav von Aschenbach gets to the goes to the barber shop, I think, to get as young as to look as young as possible and to be recognized from the boy. And it was such a strong scene that I felt that what the scene transported in Death in Venice could also transport what I needed for Fabio, the need to be seen.
Yeah. Well, it caught my attention because I was, paying, like I said, attention to detail last night. So, that was something I, I wanted to know about. And now you've answered that for me. When this might be kind of a cynical take, but when Arthur is, getting ready to possibly help Fabio financially, but it almost seemed like there was kind of a, I will help you if you XYZ. Was that intentional that, Arthur was, I don't want to say being manipulative or, or was it just him trying to get affection in whatever way that he thought was attainable?
I just wanted a very weak and naive moment, the last chance to try to get what he wants, and to make this moment possible, I needed to find something that there is a possibility. And for me, it seemed that it would also be only be possible when he uses his power, in this case, his money.
Right.
Yes. So it's a bit constructed, but
Yeah.
I felt that I would need such a scene to make clear what happens.
Yeah. And when after, towards the end, when Arthur opens the envelope that has Fabio's necklace.
Mm.
Was that Fabio leaving it as, kind of a memento, or was there something on Fabio's side that maybe he wanted to pursue something with Arthur all along?
I would say it's just a present as to say thank you, and I would not say that it meant more. But I think he is a very sensitive person, Fabio, and he wants to give him something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I like the placement of when Arthur goes into the bedroom and he's looking around and he's, seeing the prominence of the Gabriel Garcia Marquez book.
Yes.
Was that a placement for the viewer, or was it? It just kind of jumped out at me.
It's a bit shaming, but we needed a book that's in Hungarian, and I get 5 different books, and I decided to take this one because it looked nice. But there is nothing to interpret to. Yeah, it's not more.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been any book, but it's just that the fact, and I thought maybe
But, yeah.
Arthur saw that and kind of thought, oh, okay, I have a chance.
Okay. No, it wasn't.
Like if you'd be reading Oscar Wilde, or
Yeah, but that would be too obvious.
Yeah.
I wanted the Count of Monte Cristo, but we couldn't get it. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted it because it's my favorite book. It's very simple.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Stefan. So, Joe, let's see. I can't blame the cat for moving my notes around. I'm just old and feeble. So about your film, now I didn't do, I watched the film, but I didn't do research on people because I wanted to hear it from you. Can you give us a little backstory on David Robillard?
Yes. So he was he was a poet who was operating in London in the 1980s and writing and producing work, and he was also an artist. But he would never have described himself as such. He was a self-described sort of ordinary working class bloke who came from Jersey, which is an island just off the mainland of England. And he came to London in the late 70s and got work as a handyman. He did lots of DIY, he did lots of sort of, woodwork and set building and that kind of thing. And he was discovered by Gilbert and George, who are two they're not sort of, they are well-known artists, not just in the UK but internationally. And they took him in, basically. They took him in, and he did lots of work for them, whether it be canvas stretching or painting or whatever. And they discovered that he would write a lot of stuff and would draw, but he was so sort of paranoid about people I don't know, making fun of him or not getting his work, that he would sort of almost ritualistically burn his work consistently. He was burning all this stuff, and they convinced him not to do this and to hold on to it. And so he grew in confidence. He kept the day job, but he started showing people his work. He started having exhibitions in and around London. He started publishing his poetry, and all his work is very, like I said, he would never have described himself as a poet. He never really liked, he never really did readings of his work, and all of his work is quite direct and to the point. It grabs you by the jugular. It's not airy fairy in any way. It really sort of is very direct. And just as he was sort of gaining momentum in the late 80s, he died because of AIDS. And so his name and his work really didn't get the attention or the audience that it warranted. And I first came across it a few years ago when I was rooting around the bargain bin in the ICA, because, you know, I couldn't afford any of the other monographs there. So I was just sort of thinking, you know, what, you know, just going through old crates and stuff. And I came across this book called The Cat's Pajamas, and I thought, I started reading it and I thought, my God, this is so, it really, you know, when you read something and it hits you and it really speaks to your, not just experience, but your fears and your real feelings, all the stuff you can't really articulate or say out loud. And I thought, oh, this must be some sort of new emerging, you know, writing talent. And when I looked at the book, it had been published in 1987, and David had been dead for about 25 years, 30 years by that point. And so the book sort of sat on my desk for a very, very long time. And I managed to find, I think there's only sort of 3 or 4 of David's books in existence. And then when lockdown happened, I sort of do TV as well as film. So I just finished an edit for Channel 5 over in the UK. And all my bookings, because everyone's freelance, obviously, you know, all my bookings for the next year sort of collapsed in one day. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was sort of looking around, and this book was looking at me, and I was looking at this book, and the book was looking at me, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to do something with this now. So I did, and that's how the film sort of came about.
Okay. And then in the credits as it rolls, Russell Tovey. Who is Russell Tovey?
He's a British actor. He who is gay and has lots of male fans and lots of female fans as well, and he's extremely talented. And he was in History Boys, and he did Angels in America in London, and lots of other things. And I just thought he would be perfect for this, because there's something about Russell that has that same sort of directness that David had. You know, he's not, Russell's very down to earth in the same way David was. He's in the arts, you know, but he's not pretentious. He doesn't take himself seriously in that way at all. So I sort of rather unprofessionally slipped into Russell's DMs rather than sort of deal with any agents, and he got back to me and said, you know, this is interesting. Let's do it. And what also was a big help is that Russell loves his art, so Russell knew immediately who David was. But I was actually there was a talk with Russell last week about this, and although he knew who David was, he didn't really know a lot about David's sort of the sort of the philosophy of the work and why he did it. And since then, Russell's really got into it, and I'm very happy that he has. And he started, you know, trying to find out where David's other sort of lost pieces are.
Well, when I saw it, the film technique or editing reminded me a lot of Derek Jarman.
Oh wow, thank you.
Visually, it, you know, some of the maybe stills and the person's like a Nan Golden kind of quality. So I liked that, you know, even in the digital age, that you had something that was reminiscent of like Super 8, regular 816. Where did you get all the footage, and was it, you know, painstaking to do all that editing?
Well, yeah, it was painstaking, and it, you know, the factor was we couldn't, at that point in the lockdown, we couldn't film with anyone. You couldn't operate sets, so it was sort of necessity really, rather than a deliberate choice. But it seemed to work out, which is nice. And the footage came from a variety of places, including a now defunct porn studio in Chicago, who produced lots of, you know, compared to today, the gay porn of the 70s and 80s had sort of fantastic storylines, and, you know, it was all very beautifully set up and all that kind of thing. So spent lots of hours looking through that. and you know, research. And but the archive comes from all other places. It's, you know, it's like you said, it's photographs, it's different bits of film. There's stuff from the BBC, lots of independent archives, actually, of just sort of people out there who are doing their own thing in that period.
And when I was mentioning the kind of Derek Jarman quality, and you mentioned now who I know or have a idea of who Russell is, Derek Jarman in his early years and some other filmmakers used a lot of people that are now, you know, big superstars, Judi Dench, Helen Mirren, Tilda Swinton. So it's nice to see that, you know, that kind of throwback to the past, because when I saw it, and, you know, and I mentioned to Sean, the executive director, you know, when COVID first started, the feelings that I had of, you know, the unknown, the fear, harkened right back to the beginning of the AIDS crisis, when I came out at the age of 17, and I had written a letter to my mother telling her that, you know, I was in college and, you know, I thought I was gay. Her immediate response was, "Do you have AIDS?" It wasn't, you know, oh, you know, it was just that immediate not knowing, you know. And, you know, now that we have much more information, but to be able to equate that feeling, you know, of that time with this time was just, you know, just what I needed from your film. So I appreciate that. And the reason your film even being experimental was put into my particular program, like I said, it's not necessarily about physical age, it's about representation, and, you know, another era, and, you know, how we've come, and how we look back, either fondly, with regret, with suppression and repression. So yours just brought me back to that time of activism and being a young punk rock, you know, kid who just like wore his combat boots and, you know, wanted to get drunk and, you know, get laid, but, you know, what are the consequences?
Yeah.
So let's see. And I like that your title is kind of a play on words, or was that the title of
That's David's title.
Oh, okay.
That's, yeah. Well, the thing is, it's not that was the title of a book, and the thing itself, the poem, which is the narrative spine of the film, isn't a single poem either. So I basically read all his stuff and put it together and weaved a lot of stuff from different books together to make a new script, which thank God, Gilbert and George, because they sort of look after the estate, allowed. So I wasn't, you know, I didn't want to do.
Oh, you had to get permission in order to.
Well, sort of, yeah. It's it's got it's very sad, really. David's family still disown him. Really, they don't, you know, want anything. They don't want to be reminded of that. They don't want to talk about it. So they own, I think they have a bit, but Gilbert and George really sort of look after and curate his, and some of David's friends curate David's work now.
Oh, okay. And how did you get in touch with them?
I basically stalked them, much like I stalked Russell. I knew that they lived in East London, and by some detective work, I worked out where they lived. And they live on a street, and they're very clever because they don't have the number on their door. So I needed, and they don't use email and phone. So I had to write a letter, and I was about to put this, I was like, where the hell is this house? And then I couldn't work it out, and then they came out. So then I had to hide because they were like, oh my God, who's this man, you know, stalking us with this weird letter. So then I had to hide behind the corner, wait for them to go out. And then they don't know this, so this is going to come as a surprise. And then put the letter in, and then we communicated by letter, which was very sort of charming, if a bit slow, over the next few weeks.
Yeah. Well, it's nothing that would get you into trouble, but I hope you have a lot of disguises when you do your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
See them before they see you.
Yeah, exactly.
And one other thing, I don't know if you're familiar with the female artist Jules Joolz from the early 80s. She had a 12-inch called The War of Attrition that was reminiscent of the storytelling in this film. It just reminded me of that, about these two young punk rockers that are at a bus stop and they're being hassled by people, and what she's thinking, and she's remembering a time when they had been hassled before and how they dealt with it. But it was set to music, but kind of a jazzy beat or whatever. But the flow of it reminded me of that type of, the agate pop of the early 80s.
Well, you know what, Joe? I don't know, but I'm going to look now. So thank you for the suggestion.
Or like Anne Clark, Sleeper in
Yeah.
Metropolis, that type.
Yeah.
It's a song technically, but it's spoken.
Yeah.
And another thing is Russell Tovey in any relation to Frank Tovey, Thad Gadget.
I
Name
don't
is so
think
unique.
so. I don't think so. I might be wrong, but I don't think he is.
In my mind, he is.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you. In my mind, everything is all about, how I see it. So now we have Piotr and Matthew from Closed Casket. So I have to say, when I saw your film and reviewing it, not only did I watch it, I watched it again. I watched it a third time. I watched it a fourth time. And then I said, okay, this is going in my program. And I know, like I said, it's not about physical age, because I know, Matthew, you're, probably younger than me. And, it was that kind of old, bitchy, clean, the fastidious. And everyone knows somebody like that, because all I could think was, like Gladys Kravitz from Bewitched, Abner, she's flying again, call the police, that kind of sitting in your house, but the world is outside, but the world eventually comes into your house. And from the specifications that you submitted, this was shot during lockdown?
It was. It is definitely a child of a lockdown, but so it was written and kind of rehearsed. We lived together, so that was easy. And then we had a very short period of relaxation, I think, in the autumn, where we could get our hands on some kit and minimal crew and shot it then. So yeah, it's mentally, it's very much a child of lockdown.
And that kind of leads me to my next question, that I wasn't sure of the situation between you as actor and director. Was this kind of workshopped? Was it something that you worked on together, or?
It was. I mean, the script was written first, and then we had the luxury of going through it and then amending it, and so on and so on. So yeah, that was definitely a collaboration, because it's a pig of a script for an actor, because it's I don't know, like the idea behind it. One of the ideas behind it, well, two main ideas behind it. One was to show exactly what you say to, and also to tap into this tradition. It's not exclusively British, but it's very prominent, and it's actually very uncinematic, of this of essentially a monologue. Alan Bennett used to do it very well, and it's actually usually very gendered, mostly and weirdly, well, maybe not weirdly, but one of the things that the BBC produced during lockdown, because it was one of the few things that it could do, was a remake of the Talking Heads, which was the Bennett monologues from the 80s, I suppose, and early 90s. But because it's a single actor, usually talking to the camera, so it was relatively easy and safe to do under the circumstances, and people did them at home. But
they're predominantly women, actually, and kind of strong northern women, and it's quite interesting, because they're obviously there is a campness about it. And about what he does, and I mean, he's a brilliant writer, and he's a really good observer of kind of human interaction, but also his monologues are kind of over here anyway, very legendary, I suppose.
It wasn't and the other thing I really wanted to do with it is to kind of make a film that is not about, no offense, but like, you know, young, kind of body conscious gays. I mean, there is just so much of that, and it kind of feels so decontextualized, and it feels so, and I completely understand the need for, you know, the amount of coming out stories or coming of age stories and so on and so on, but we kind of reaching in some places of the world, not every, you know, an era now, a time when people, you know, are getting old, who either had been able to live their lives as out gay people, or the majority of their lives, and so on. And I kind of felt like that was also quite an important, well, as the program suggests, actually, which is right. But also to do something in which the fact that that person happens to be gay is not that important, because I mean, the biggest thing about Derek is that he's creepy as fuck, not that he's gay. Like the fact that he's gay is kind of secondary.
Yeah. Well, what you were saying about, you know, younger generation, the first year that I did this indirectly, we used to have a coming of age shorts program. The ball didn't really drop, but no one put it together. So in the past 3 years, we've not now had a coming of age. Senior Moments took its place. So, you know, we got the ball rolling in motion now. Here's the motion, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, I want to see this either as an ongoing series. I want to see a full-length feature.
People have said that.
Do you know what? It's really funny you should say that, because quite a lot, obviously we showed it to friends and family and stuff like that, and everyone was very complimentary, as you would, but sort of quite effusive in the fact that kind of going, oh God, like he's such a rich character that like what's going to happen next? Like what's he going to do next? Is he going to kind of host some kind of podcast, or is he going to kind of, you know, because he's kind of got a little bit of you know, something in all of us, in that kind of nosy neighbor, kind, you know, sort of slightly desperate, particularly in lockdown, you know, that kind of lonely, you know, all of those things.
I have a feeling Derek was like that before lockdown, though.
He definitely was. He definitely was. But I think lockdown has probably made people see him in also quite a different way as well.
Yeah. I'm curious about, now knowing that you maybe kind of, you know, you gave your characterization to Derek, how did the come about?
Oh, we had a bit of an argument about it, actually. I thought it was a bit much.
No.
Whereas Piotr sort of found it, he was like, I think you should keep it in, and we'll see what happens. We can always cut it, you know.
We shot it in a way that there's always quite a lot of pauses before, so we could cut around it, because it was, But yeah, I definitely felt like he needed a tick of some sort.
The first time I heard it, I wasn't sure if I heard it. So as the film went on, it's a punctuation that gets more emphatic, and by the end, it's like that's all I heard. I didn't hear Derek say anything. I just heard that, you know. And
And I thought, well, if we're going to do it, we've got to do it, and we've got to go. I've got to feel comfortable about doing it. So I've got to get to that place where it's you know, stop thinking about it and just
put it
go
in.
for it.
But I think punctuation is the right word, because I mean, as I said, it's such an unfilmic film because it's a monologue essentially.
Right.
You know, there are two master shots and a few cutaways. You know, in comparison with the complexity of all your films, it's very, very you know, uncinematic. So you know, and so if you've got I think it was about a 7-page script of no stage directions and just monologue. You know, how do you break it up into chunks that A, you can edit, and B, you can kind of maintain interest. So yeah, you needed, so the vape and the tick were kind of one of the some of the punctuating devices that we need.
And definitely the surroundings. If you can excuse me for a second, I brought something that's going to be reminiscent of your film. I forgot to have prop comic. Oh God, where is it? I should have had it out. I thought I was the only one who kept one of these in my.
Oh,
No way! Okay.
It broke earlier in my bag. I'm a bike carrier in Boston, and I had it in there all day. And when I went to look at it, we see it.
Okay. So embarrassing confession. Pretty much all the kind of creepy props, apart from the waving pipe, in the film, we kind of no, we acquired in the like in charity shops around London and so on.
So it's not your real
But this
phone.
one we have, like, that was ours. Yeah, no, we picked that up. I picked it up in Florence, I think, as a joke, and so yeah.
It's so prominent over his shoulder, you know. So I thank everyone. Well, I guess we've kind of we're going to wind down, but I thank everyone. Now that you've all submitted films and you're all alumni, please submit more films to us. I think Joe and Peter and Matthew should collaborate, and Derek should read some of David Robillard's work.
I'm not sure if Joe would be happy.
That would be a great podcast, but you know,
Joe's all for it. Don't worry, I am.
yeah. And you know, like I said, check out the films. Look at the comments, because you know that's where you're going to be hearing feedback from the audience as opposed to applause, which I will give you now. Thank you all for being here. And thanks to our audience, everyone who's viewed this film, and we look forward to presenting more queer film for you next year.
Thank you very much for having us, and well done, everyone.
Yeah.
Excellent
And
films.
please
Brilliant.
go online and
Thank
check
you.
out the other films. We have 24 24 features and 17 shorts programs available on Zerb TV. Tickets are available now, and the shorts programs run through the end of the month. Check out our website, wickedqueer.org. And keep in touch with us, and we'll keep in touch with you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Brilliant.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Joe.